Hello, I'm Anna Mary Williford, one of 7 librarians at the University of Montevallo's Carmichael Library. This short screencast video is intended to give you the basics about how to search for articles in Carmichael Library's databases and also how to use Interlibrary Loan to order articles that we might not have full text access to. So please begin by locating Carmichael Library's homepage, which is up on the screen right now. The URL is libguides.montevallo.edu, or you could also just do a quick Google search for Carmichael Library Montevallo and it should come right up. So in a previous video, I talked about how to use this big main search box on the homepage here to look for library resources. And searching in this box will give you books, articles, and more, just like it says. It gives you articles, it gives you ebooks, it gives you all kinds of stuff. But sometimes, especially when you're new to searching, it is a good idea to just go into one database at a time to look for articles if that is specifically what you need. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So instead of searching in this big main box, which searches for everything, if you want to focus in specifically on articles, what you want to go do is go into the databases, because that's where you'll find the articles. So when you click this databases box from the home page here, you're taken to the big A to Z list of the 128 databases that Montevallo, that Carmichael subscribes to, right? And all of these are a little bit different from each other, or we wouldn't have 128 separate ones. So some of these, like the first two that come up on the screen, have a little bit of everything. And if you look at the descriptions, it kind of indicates that. So these have articles from all different subject areas, from all different source types, and they're good places usually to start out searching, just to kind of see what's out there. But sometimes you want to do more specialized research in a certain subject area, or you want to really focus in on just one article type. And if you want to do that, there are drop-down boxes up here that will help you figure out what would be the best ones to use. So for instance, say if you know that you need psychology articles, you could choose psychology from the drop-down here. And now this is a much shorter list, right? So as we scroll down through, again, these two are kind of probably pop up in every list that you see, because they do have a little bit of everything. But then some of the rest of these, or most of the rest of these, are just psychology-specific databases, especially these two down at the bottom here. If you are looking for news articles, specifically from newspapers, there is a subject box for that. If you choose news from the drop-down here, these databases at the bottom are newspaper-only databases, so that's the only kinds of articles that you're going to get in there. So you're going to have some databases in this list that have only one subject area in them. You're going to have some databases that only have one type of article in them, and then again, you're going to have the ones with a little bit of everything, which is like these two. Or sometimes there's a very narrow focus, like this database right here only has articles from African American newspapers that were published during these years. So there's a really broad range here in this list of 128 databases. If you're not sure what would be a good database to start out in, try Academic Search Premier. Just do a quick search in there, kind of like get a feel for what's out there. But that's also a really great question to ask a librarian. And again, in the previous video, I talked a lot about the different ways that you can get in touch with us, but just as a reminder, from the library homepage, you can send us a chat, you can email us from this link, or you can always just stop in and see us at the library if you happen to be on campus. Okay, so from the database list, I had mentioned Academic Search Premier, so I will show you a quick search in that and what it's going to look like. And again, in the big main search on the library homepage, you will find articles when you search in there. And in the previous video, there were some articles that showed up in our results list. But because it's searching so many things at one time, sometimes, especially when you're new to searching, it can be hard to filter through to what exactly you need. And in a database where you have still a lot of articles, but not quite so many because you're only searching one place at a time instead of all the places at once, sometimes that can be a more manageable list to sort through. So I will use the same topic that I did in the other video just to kind of compare. Okay, so when I search voting rights in here, which again is a pretty broad topic, I get about 5,700 results. Okay, so many less than that 1.6 million that we got in our or first search in the discovery system, but still a lot to filter through. Luckily though, the databases will give you a lot of options to do that. And keep in mind that not all of those 128 databases are made by the same company. So this one is an EBSCOhost database, and we have a lot of EBSCOhost databases. So all of the search features on the screens of those will pretty much look the same. If you happen to click on a database that looks a little bit different than the screen you see right now, don't panic. Just look for the help feature, which a lot of times is up in the corner here, but there will just about always be some kind of help or FAQs or video tutorials even sometimes that will kind of clue you in on how to navigate through that database. And again, if you get stuck, that's what the librarians are here for, to help you with that. Okay, so when you do a search in here, again, we got a pretty good list of results here, and as you start looking down through, you're going to notice that they're from different types of sources. So here's a periodical, which could mean a magazine or a newspaper. Some of them are academic journals, which are your scholarly sources. So when your professors tell you that they want, they might call them academic journals or scholarly journals or peer-reviewed journals, you might hear any of those terms. Those are your research-based sources, right? They're written by professors, experts in the field, usually scholars who have put a lot of research into them, right? And they're you might also see them called peer-reviewed, like that is on the left here, because they go through a very lengthy review process before they get published in those journals to make sure that that research is legitimate. So those types of sources are very different from the periodical sources, but again, a lot of times with research, you need a mix of both types of sources to really flesh out your topic and make your argument. So just keep in mind that in a database like Academic Search Shamir that has a little bit of everything, you're going to really get a variety. If you really want to hone in though on one type of source, so there's a box right up front here where we can check to narrow down to just scholarly or peer-reviewed journals, because a lot of times you're going to want to do that based on what your professor's requirements are. But there's a lot of other stuff in here too, right? So if you click the Show More box, it shows you exactly what types of sources are in here. So you have magazine articles, academic journals, which again, those are your scholarly research sources. You have newspapers, book reviews, which most of the time that you won't need, but sometime you might, so those are here if you want to look at them. Trade publications, which are for professionals in a certain field, but they're not necessarily those scholarly research articles, and sometimes even some books or ebooks show up in here. But there's a lot of things to choose from. Keep in mind that anything that is in one of these databases as a source is a legitimate, credible source, but they're not all scholarly sources. And sometimes that's hard to kind of wrap your mind around, especially when you're new to searching. But just keep in mind that the newspaper articles, if you narrow down to newspapers, even though they're from very credible, legitimate, like fact-check sources, they're newspapers, which is not the same as an academic journal or scholarly source. So make sure that you really check with your professor and understand what kind of sources you're supposed to be looking for before you check any of these boxes. Okay, so you can narrow down by source type. You can narrow down by publication date if you need to look for newer stuff, especially if you're doing a topic that's related to like science or medicine or a field where the date is really going to matter. There's also an option to narrow just to full text. So as you scroll down through your results list here, you'll see that most usually of the options are going to have this link for the full text right there, where you can click on that and open it up and view the article right there. Sometimes, though, you'll see instead where it says Request through Interlibrary Loan. Let me check the scholarly peer-reviewed journals limiter here and see if we get any. Yes, so here number 3 is one that you would need to request through Interlibrary Loan. So all that means is that this particular journal, the Journal of Politics, isn't one that we have full text of for this issue. So instead of having the link to the full text like this, where you can click on it and open the article right up, if when you click on this article, and you take a look at the abstract, which is the summary, and you read that, and you think, man, I really, really would be able to use that article in my paper that I'm writing, or my research that I'm doing. If you want to order it, that's when you use this link right here. So if you click Request through Interlibrary Loan, this tab will pop up. If you don't have an account already, click this and create one, and then once you have it, it'll be there for the rest of your time here. If you already have one, just go ahead and sign in, and then you can order the article. So what happens here is you don't have to pay extra money to do that. You fill out the form and submit the request, and our Interlibrary Loan staff will find another library that does have the full text of that journal and and they'll send a copy. So keep an eye on your email, whatever email address you use to sign up for your Interlibrary Loan account, and you'll get an email when that PDF is available to log back in and download. You can use Interlibrary Loan for books as well. So in the previous video, we looked for books. If there's a book that you need that we don't have, or we have a copy but it's already checked out, you can log into your Interlibrary Loan account and fill out a request the same way, and those come in the mail. So just keep in mind that this is not instantaneous. You'll have to usually wait a couple of days, but it's definitely an option if there's a resource that you need that we don't have, and it doesn't cost you extra, so keep that in mind. And if you ever have any questions about Interlibrary Loan, or you feel like there's something that you should be able to find but you're not finding it, come and see a librarian and we can help you track it down. Okay, so if though you're seeing these requests for Interlibrary Loan links a lot and you just want to focus on what we actually have available right now, you can limit to full text right here and it will take all of those other ones out. And then you'll see either the full text finder, which will link you right to it, or the full text that you can open right here. Okay, and if you find one that sounds pretty along the lines of what you're looking for, when you click on it, there's a lot of things on this page, a lot of features that can be helpful for you in your research. First of all, if you want to print or save the article, a lot of folks just go over here to the right-hand side of the screen and click print there. That will only print what's on the screen right now, though. So if you want to print out the whole article, you have to open the PDF and print it from there. So you can open the PDF, print it, save it, whatever you want to do with it. You can also email it to yourself directly from the database, which is really handy. So if you click email here, you can put your email address in here. It doesn't have to be your Montevallo one, just whichever one you want them to send it to. And a subject line can be helpful to remind yourself what the article was about. But if it's in here as a PDF, it'll attach it right to your email. You click send, and then it's in your email for as long as you need it. If you are the kind of person that just likes to send yourself links to things to go back and click on later, what you don't want to do is use this link up at the top here, so the URL for this web page, the way that you would for a normal web page. These library resources, you have to be a Montevallo user to access, right? So your browsing session is going to be temporary, and the link from this box will expire as soon as you close out that session. So if you emailed yourself this link, and then you close out the search and you try to click on that to open up again tomorrow, it would not work. Instead, what you want to do is click down here where it says permalink. If you click on that, this little box pops up. You can copy and paste this link, which permalink just means permanent link, right? So it's a permanent link right back to this very page. And anytime you click on that link, it'll take you right back to this page for this article from intent to effect. And then you can access the article again anytime you like. One other thing to keep in mind is that if you're off campus, if you try to open the PDF of any of these articles that come up in these searches, it'll just prompt you to log in. So again, you have to be a Montevallo user to be able to access these resources. So if you're off campus, once you log in, it's just the same username and password that you use to access your Montevallo email or any of your other university accounts. But then you should be right in to view those resources. If you ever have trouble with that, if you're off campus, send us a quick chat. And we can try to help you figure out what's going on, but for the most part, you should be able to get in and view those, no problem. Okay, so there's the permalink. You can email it to yourself. Another feature over here that you may or may not find useful is the citation tool. So if you click on Cite, this box will pop up and it gives you the citation in all of the major citation styles. So you can scroll down to the one you need if it happens to be MLA. One big word of caution with these, though, and there's a lot of professors that don't even like you to use these because of this, but keep in mind that these citations are computer generated, so there's not a person that sits down and writes them out and makes sure that they are correctly formatted. So a lot of times what you'll see is the information is correct, but the capitalization or the italics or something like that will be wrong. So copy and paste it just as a starting point, but then definitely go to the OWL or go to the MLA site or wherever you usually use to check your citations, and make sure that you check the formatting because you don't want to lose points for all of that kind of thing. So it's a place to start, but not a place to stop. Don't just use it without checking it first to make sure that the formatting is okay. Okay, So that's some things from over in this menu on the right that you might find useful. Another thing to pay attention to on this screen, besides the abstract that I mentioned, which is the summary of the article, so that can tell you a lot about it, especially if it's like a 20-page research article, read the abstract first because it's really going to tell you what the article is about and help you decide if it's really relevant to the research that you're doing, and it can save you a lot of time reading an article that you can't end up actually using because it's not what you need for your research that you're doing. But one other thing too on this screen that you may find very helpful is this section right here. So subject terms just means this is the list that the database made of like the main topics that this article covers. Like what are the main subjects that this article is about? And in these, a lot of times you can find words to then take up and put in your search up here that may even be better than the first ones that you used. So especially when you're new to researching a topic and you might not know a whole lot about it yet, sometimes the word or phrase that you would use to describe something isn't the same one that the scholar writing the article would use to describe it. So voting rights and suffrage, they're very similar terms, right? But they're completely different words. So you might say voting rights, but the scholars that are writing about that topic use the term suffrage whenever they talk about it. So if you only search voting rights and you never put in the word suffrage, you might miss a lot of articles that are really relevant. So sometimes these can give you ideas of other things to search. Sometimes they can give you things to add to make your search more specific. Sometimes they might even give you like a whole different direction to go with your research that you didn't even think about. So if you are having trouble finding articles, especially, or even if you are finding what you think you need, I mean, still pay attention to the subject terms. It can give you good tips sometimes. But if you're having trouble finding what you need, sometimes looking at the subject terms can help you figure out a better direction to go. And that's also something librarians are happy to help you with. So that's something that we do with students all the time, is sit down with them and figure out, what are the best terms to use for this search? Like, are you looking in the right place? So if you're looking in a database and you're not finding what you think you should be finding, it doesn't necessarily mean that your topic is bad or there's nothing out there about it. It just might mean, first of all, maybe you're not looking in the right place. Maybe there's a better database that you could be finding these things in. Or maybe it means that you just need to tweak a little bit the terms that you're using to search for them. So if you're having trouble, come see a librarian. We're happy to sit down with you and take a look at all of that. Also, the database is going to give you more than one box for a reason, right? So unlike Google, where you just have one big box that you kind of string everything together, the database expects that you're going to be searching a little bit more in a little bit more of a sophisticated way, right? So break out your search terms and put each one in a box. So sometimes you'll only have one here, but usually you're going to want to be more specific on that, right? Because if you're writing, say, a 10-page paper, you can't talk about everything there is to talk about voting rights in a 10-page paper. You could focus on a certain group of people or a place, and again, that's going to kind of come out as you're doing your research. You can figure out how to narrow that down, but every term that you have, every additional term you have, I should say, add them one box at a time, and your search will get smaller. Okay, so we went from, I think it was like 1100 maybe before, to now we're down to 157. Every time you add a term, that number will get smaller. So if you have a lot of terms, add them just one at a time. That way, if your search goes from like 15,000 to 0, then you should take a look at whatever you put in that made that happen, because maybe you just made a typo or something like that. But just kind of add one at a time until you get to a list that's like pretty comfortable, or you're pretty comfortable with the size of that list, and then just start looking at those articles. So again, if the PDF, if the full text is there, you can open that right up. If it's one that you need to request through Interlibrary Loan, you can click on the link to do that. But again, there's all these options kind of over here on the left-hand side of the screen to narrow things down. And you can keep adding as many terms as you want. Okay, so that is a sample search in just one database. Again, it's called Academic Search Premier. I showed it because it has a little bit of everything and it's pretty easy to use, and it's one that probably for most classes you'll be able to find stuff in. But again, it is definitely not the only database that we have. So there's 128 of them, and they're all a little bit different from each other, which is why we have them as a variety. So take advantage of the subject drop-down box here, and also take advantage of your librarians, because we can make recommendations for you for what database would be best to look for certain subjects. But just keep in mind too that I mentioned that newspapers aren't scholarly sources, right? So if you're in a news database, like this one, newspaper source. Okay, so this is an EBSCOhost database. It's made by the same company as the one we just looked at, except that it tells you up here that we're searching newspaper source instead of academic search premier. But if you are searching in here, because it's an EBSCO database, they have the same, like this kind of just shell for their search interface here. So you still have the option here to narrow down to scholarly or peer-reviewed journals, even though this is a newspaper-only database. And students tend to just like by default automatically click on that because professors ask for that so often. But if it's only newspaper articles and you click to narrow down to scholarly resources, this is going to happen every time because again, even if it's the most credible newspaper in the entire history of the world, it's not going to be a scholarly source, right? It's not going to be peer-reviewed. It's not going to have that big long list of citations at the end. It's not going to be like some big research study that's being written up. They're just different types of resources. So again, if you are not sure about what kinds of resources you need, that's definitely something to check with your professor about. But the types of articles that you need are going to really determine like what kind of database you're looking in. So again, there's a big variety. They all have things that are a little bit different in them. So keep that in mind when you're looking. And again, use the subject drop-down box, ask a librarian, or start out in a database that does have a little bit of everything to kind of give you an idea of what's out there and how to narrow down. Okay, so that is just a very, very short, brief, basic look at how to find articles in the library databases. But definitely for more in-depth help, just as a reminder, from the library homepage, you can chat with us if we're online. This green button will be lit up. You can send us a chat from here if you just want to say, hey, like, what's the best database to look for this in? Or, hey, I'm in academic search premier and I can't figure out how to print this article. Or, I don't know how to tell if the full text is in here or not. And do I need to use Interlibrary Loan? Any question that you have, you can send us a chat and we can help you figure it out. If we're offline, you can click here to send us an email. And then when you fill out this form and submit it, it emails it to all of the librarians at once. So that's a really good way to get in touch with us. You can stop in the library. On the first floor of the library, the research help desk, which is a smaller desk to your right when you come in those doors, a librarian or library staff member is there most of the time, except late at night or on Saturdays, to answer questions that you might have. And you can also, if you go under help, you can click on meet with us if you want to actually make an appointment so that you know for sure the librarian will be here to meet with you. If you fill this form out, tell us as much as you can about whatever it is you're looking for, and then that way one of us will get back to you and set up a time for us to sit down. So lots of ways to get in touch with us. Please don't be shy. Again, I'm Anna Mary, but there are 6 other librarians also, and any of us are happy to help you with your research. Good luck finding your article.